Rhetorical questions are an important technique to use when persuading someone, so it's something that you should be using in your persuasive writing. Quite often, as part of a rhetorical question, there will be something called a fallacy, which is kind of like a lie almost. There are a few different types. I'm going to take you through those, and then in your group or with a partner, I want you to try and find as many examples of these kinds of fallacies in the paragraph at the end. The first type is called apple polishing, sometimes called the teacher's pet fallacy. It's like when you're appealing to flattery, so complimenting someone to win their approval or their support. So, for example, before I ask my mum if I can go to the movies on a school night, I might soften her up by saying, "Gee, Mum, I really love your new haircut." However, most mums are quite switched on, so they know when this is happening. The green-eyed monster, so an argument from envy. This appeals to the notion that people who have more than you are flawed. So if your uncle makes more money than your father, then your uncle is not as good a person as your father. So for example, Jenna always wears the latest styles, therefore she must be very vain. False dilemma. So this is where it presents two statements on the assumption that only one of them is true. So therefore, if the first one is true, then the second one must be true. Sorry, if the first one is false, then the second one must be true. However, both statements may actually be false. So for example, statement A is either I can find a home I can afford or I live with my parents for the rest of my life. Statement B is I can't afford to buy a home, so therefore I'm stuck living with my parents. This is called a false dilemma because there are other alternatives outside of those two statements. For example, they could rent an apartment. Next one is a slippery slope. This is where your reasoning progresses from a specific statement to a general truth quite quickly. So generalizations can quite often fall into the slippery slope kind of rule. So has your teacher or anyone ever told you that if they allow you to break one small rule, then everyone will want to break all of the rules? That's called a slippery slope reasoning. For example, when your little sister wants to get a kitten and your dad says that if he lets her get a kitten, then next she'll want a pony and then an elephant. Okay, it's completely unreasonable generalizations based on the fact that's at hand. The say it isn't so, so the burden of proof. The burden of proof is a fallacy that concludes something is true unless it's proven otherwise. So when you point out that your friend couldn't possibly have caught 25 trout in one afternoon, and your friend says, prove it. Because you obviously cannot prove for certain that they are lying, you're forced to drop the subject. So say it isn't so, burden of proof means that without proof, we assume that it is true. Begging the question because it's true. So this is a circular type of reasoning. So you base your truth of your statement on the notion that it is true. So for example, the radio announcer says that the trombone is the best loved jazz instrument because everyone who loves jazz loves a trombone. Therefore it must be the best loved. What I want you to do, I want you to read this paragraph and I want you to find as many of those fallacies that I've just gone through in this paragraph. I want you to write the example in your book and label what kind of fallacy it might be. Feel free to rewatch the video as many times as you need. Just a quick recap, you have the apple polishing, arguments from envy, a false dilemma, a slippery slope, a burden of proof, and begging the question. So try and find examples of all of those in this paragraph. Good luck.